Let's move to our first speaker. It's Jordi Boggiano. He's co-author and maintainer of Dependency Manager Composer. And it's kind of special written for him because he has given more than 100 talks, but it was before the pandemics, before 2019, if I remember it well. Since then, many things happened. Free children, pandemics. So his first time on a stage in the 20s, so please cheer him up, and it's yours.
Thank you. Thank you, thank you. Yeah, that's indeed been a while that I've been on the stage. I have been at a few conferences just as a tourist, an attendee. But it's good to be back. I guess I'll skip that. You can see my face, and she introduced me, so let's dive in. So Composer is a dependency management tool for PHP. So it's not made for WordPress. It's really just made as a generic PHP tool. And it allows you, like the basic functionality is that it allows you to list your dependencies and then install them, and it will go and kind of track down the dependencies of your dependencies and their dependencies and so on and so on. And then just get all of that installed and updated as well. It is a command line utility. And by default, it talks to the package repository or registry, which is packages.org. So there you can find like all the libraries that are available. Yeah, all the things you can use as dependencies. Now, if we look at Composer and WordPress, WordPress, as far as I understand, is not directly using Composer for anything but the dev dependencies. So I found the repository yesterday, but I forgot what it was called. It's like this WordPress developer repository. You do have there a Composer JSON listing a few dependencies for tools like test framework and stuff like that. I forgot what exactly is in there, but so it is used for that. But beyond that, I'm not entirely sure of the usage like within the WordPress community. I had a few anecdotal conversations this morning with various people that told me, oh yeah, we use it, but it's not like embedded in WordPress itself, so it's kind of more an ad hoc thing that you can do. So maybe just if you could just give me a show of hands of like who used Composer at all, just unrelated to WordPress. Okay, so almost all of you. So that's good. And who of you within the WordPress context? Is it also most? Okay, I guess maybe half. I don't know, but it's okay. So you're not all lost here. That's already good. Yeah, so how would you go about doing that? I know also a bunch of plugins use it. Like within the plugin itself, they kind of install the dependencies and then they ship all of that together into a zip file, and then you get like the plugin and the dependencies into one. But then you get problems because different plugins using the same dependencies will conflict. So these tools have started being used more and more, like PHP Scoper and Mozart. Which are kind of namespacing all the classes so that you get unique class names for everything. Like I find this, but because I'm like this doesn't sound like it can work for everything. Like I'm sure it can 99% get you there, but like there are certainly some edge cases that will cause problems. So it's a necessary evil, I guess. And the other issue you have is with the autoloader. You end up having like several autoloaders and loading. Even if you don't have version conflicts with the scoping, you still like end up loading, maybe 10 times the same library with different names, which sounds kind of wasteful and suboptimal to me. There are other solutions like this Roots or Bedrock, or like I'm not quite clear what's the name properly there, but anyway. There's that, and I heard this morning as well about WP Starter, I think it was called, which are like decent ways to get WordPress installed as a dependency, etc. And if you do that, I guess you're probably mostly familiar with this wpackagist.org, which mirrors the WordPress plugins and makes it kind of understandable to Composer. Now, yeah, what would be the point of integrating Composer further into WordPress? I think you could clean up all these hacks that I mentioned before. You could like manage dependencies between plugins and libraries also just kind of natively. I've heard now since last year you have cross-plugin dependencies, but not really with version constraints. So it's more of a like install both and hope it works, which, yeah, it's okay, but it's like, I think it would be nicer if you had version constraints and you could actually enforce this. And yeah, so I think that would be the main benefit. Now, again, I had a few discussions this morning, which led me to believe this might be unrealistic in the short term. I don't know. I don't know about the long term. Like we'll see where this goes. So let's dive in. I think the first best practice to me is to know your tools. And so I just want to go through the workflow a little bit of like the flow of how to use Composer. So if we start down there, you have this Composer require or remove commands. These are really like the good entry points to add or remove dependencies. And what they do really is they change the Composer JSON. So you can do that yourself, of course. Just go and edit the Composer JSON, change the requirements. And then the next step they do is they run a Composer update. Now the Composer update, it goes and fetches metadata from Packagist or WPackagist or whatever you have in there as repository. Takes that metadata, solves the dependencies. Once hopefully you have a set of dependencies that is compatible with each other, it writes this Composer log file. Then you have a next step, which, if you run a Composer update directly, then it also does that, right? It does the part about updating metadata, and then it will run for you implicitly a Composer install, because we know once you updated the log file, you most likely want to install the new dependencies you have. So we always do it implicitly, but technically these are two separate steps. And at the install step, we go and fetch the code, which in 99% of the case is usually from GitHub. Now with WPackagist, I'm not sure, it might be hosted on the WordPress plugin repo. But yeah, you go fetch the code, install it in the vendor directory, and that's that. So the composer.log file really contains all the metadata with the download URLs, the exact versions you have, like everything you need to install the log file, the vendor dir, without talking to Packagist anymore. So at install step, you don't talk to the repository. So I want to emphasize that really, like, please commit the log file. I don't know if there's still anyone not commenting the log file. It's maybe a bad question because nobody dares to raise their hand when I ask like that. But anyway, I hope you're commenting it, because it really ensures that you have reliable installs. Like if you don't have it committed and two people install the project, they'll end up with like different versions of dependencies possibly. If your CI is installing this or your production server is installing during deployment and you don't have the log file, you might at some point end up with just some random new version with a regression being installed and you didn't test it, and then it's just whole production blows up. Not a good day. So do commit the log file. Like there's a good reason it's there. Just a quick note about semantic versioning in case you're not familiar with it. This, in a sense, just says you have three components in version numbers. You have the major, minor, and patch versions. And every time you do a breaking change, you should increase the major one. Every time you have new features, you should increase the minor one. And then for everything else, you just do patch releases. It's a super simple concept, but it's very powerful. I think if everyone respects that, like as a maintainer, if maintainers respect that, then consumers of open source code, or well, regardless if it's open source or not, but consumers of libraries just know that, okay, if I do an upgrade of a patch version, you know, nothing should break. Like theoretically, this should be safe. Obviously, mistakes do happen, and it's you know, the real world is never like that simple, but it is a good guideline, and it really helps to understand what you're doing when you're upgrading a major version. Using this semantic versioning, you know, okay, now I have to pay attention. I have to go look at the change log in detail, find the upgrade notes. Maybe, you know, like it's a bit more involved than just like upgrading and hoping for the best. Another hint, which I think if you do develop plugins, especially if you bundle your autoloader in the vendor directory and you like, push all that stuff into the zip file you're pushing out in the plugin in the end, like please take care to have an autoloader that is performant. And it doesn't take much. Like it's really just this optimized flag will scan all the files and build a class map that's already fast. But then if you add this flag, then you make sure that your autoloader will not try to autoload other classes. So if it's stuff it doesn't know about, it will just skip and that's it. It won't go and look at the file system, oh, maybe I have this file somewhere. Like, it will just say, okay, I have this class map and I know all the classes are in there. And if it's not there, it's not my problem. So this, I think, is critical if you have like 10 autoloaders running in process because you have 10 plugins that have each their autoloader. Because otherwise they will go and do a lot of file system checks, and that is slow. If you do have conflicts when trying to update stuff, and it cannot find a solution to your dependencies, usually these why and why not commands are quite helpful, because you can ask it like to show you, hey, why is this installed, or why cannot this be installed, and then it might output it in a way that's easier to understand than the problem resolutions. They are sometimes a bit verbose, and like we've done our best, but it's just sometimes people are extremely confused about this, which I can understand. But yeah, these can help refine it a little bit. Another thing that can really save you from accidental like production chaos is to define your platform version. So you have this config platform, and then you can do PHP, or you can also define other like PHP extensions and stuff like that you have in there. But I would say that just the PHP version is already extremely useful. So you're saying that regardless of whichever version of PHP I'm running Composer with, this is the version I have in production. And so this is the version that's relevant for the dependencies. Because if I'm running locally with the latest and shiniest on my laptop, I say I have 8.4, but then technically my production is a bit outdated and I'm running 8.1 or 7 something, then I want to make sure that it installs, that it selects versions of libraries that will work with my PHP 7 in production. Yeah, so that will just avoid bad surprises where you get like the latest on your laptop and then you deploy it and suddenly it doesn't quite work. Okay, let's dive into security a little bit. So this concept of software supply chain, I guess you might have heard of it. What does this mean really? I think it depends a little bit of who you're talking to, but technically, like the software supply chain, I guess, would be, you know, from your PHP application, or you have WordPress plugins. You have a bunch of tools you might be using on the side. You have the PHP language, web server, database, some C library that are used to build all of that. The C compiler that is used to build the C language and stuff. Then you have the Linux kernel, and then I guess that's where the software stack ends. Then you go to hardware, but that's still like kind of your supply chain. So it's, you know, depending on how far you want to go there, this can be a lot of things you need to consider when you're talking about security. So here I will kind of stick to the light blue, like PHP stuff, but yeah, there's more to it for sure. So what does a supply chain attack look like? You might remember the left pad episode there on the NPM repository. This is a long time ago now, but someone just like deleted their package, and it so happened that it was used everywhere in the node packages. So like everything was indirectly depending on this, and they just went like delete. And then, yeah, that was a bad day for the node ecosystem, but it was like 3 lines of code, I think, so it was pretty easy to replace. But, then you have typo squatting, which is like, you know, submitting like package names that have a typo in them, so that if someone says like, oh, composer require like this package name, and then you make a typo in it, then instead of getting an error, you'll get something, but it just might not be what you're looking for. And it might have some, I don't know, Bitcoin miner in there, or something that will upload all your secret keys, or yeah. Yeah, Travis, I don't know who remembers Travis CI. It's been a while as well, but they had like public logs of everything, and they're still accessible, and just in there you have a bunch of secret keys as well that got exposed like years ago, and some people just never rotated them, and then you might actually have access still. Yeah, so all these are kind of just examples of, you know, something going bad, not in your code. It's not a security vulnerability in your code directly. It's just in your supply chain. According to Sonatype there, who's like they're tracking this, you see the trend is not looking great. It's like more and more malicious packages that they find. I'm hoping we don't have that big a problem on Packagist, but I'm not actually sure. Like it's, you know, we have 400,000 packages, like over that. Like we can't review all this ourselves, right? So I don't know. Like there's for sure some bad stuff out there, but I think that one of the problems is that with AI, it also becomes extremely easy to generate like a bunch of code and README and stuff like that all looks shiny and convincing, but then the code behind can do whatever it wants, right? So I think you have to become more and more vigilant. How do you mitigate this? You should really like updating dependencies. That's one of the most critical, I think, is like updating, like keeping your software up to date. Auditing your vendors and just making sure you depend on vendors and companies that take this seriously as well, which I think is good because you can offload a lot of the work that way by picking like, I don't know, a serious hosting company or a serious like library vendor, plugin vendor, whatever. Yeah, if you don't have to double check their work all the time, this is a lot of value, I think. And finally, just like defining processes that reduce this risk. So that's again like something like the log file, making sure you depend on that, making sure you build some artifacts on your continuous integration servers, for example, that it builds, it runs the tests, if you're good at that point, then you zip that up and keep it for deployment. Like, don't rerun the whole install in production, and then that's one less chance of something going bad, right? Yeah. Now, how do we look at it from the packages perspective? Right now, we have, as you saw in the graph there in the beginning, we store only the metadata. Unfortunately, we cannot really do checksums or signatures for the archives as long as they come from GitHub, because GitHub kind of regenerates those often, or sometimes at least. And so the archives don't look exactly the same. Like, there's some metadata in there in the zip format that changes, like some timestamp and so on. And so that we can't easily sign this. So we're looking at fixing that in the future, maybe, but that's how it is right now. On the upside, we ship everything over TLS, and we kind of go to the source of truth, which is GitHub, and directly extract like a zip file of the repository. So I think that gives you a good certainty that what you get is what's in the repo. If you compare it to other things like NPM, where they upload a zip file to publish the package, sometimes like the actual package you install is completely different from what's in the repository, because they built it, and with JavaScript it's fairly common and it makes sense there, but it's just, I find this a bit distressing sometimes when you look at what you have on disk and what you have on GitHub is completely different, and it's like, yeah, it doesn't look very trustworthy sometimes. We also had our own little security events in the past. I had some people register like all dead GitHub accounts that still had packages pointing to them, and then they just register their account, and suddenly the repo is alive again. Like, this package becomes alive again because you have like a repo that's behind it again. This we fix now is just checking the repo IDs on GitHub. So if it's a new ID, we just freeze the package and done. But yeah, so these things happen on our end as well, and we take care of them. If you want to go further than just using packages.org, there are a bunch of options you can use. So that's like using your own repository. You kind of abstract yourself then from packages.org and GitHub. So there are various solutions from various vendors. One of them is myself, Private Packagist. That's a product we're selling as well, that does like mirroring, and so you store a copy of everything, so you're safe from people deleting their stuff or modifying it. And you get like all the metadata and the code served from there. So like, if we go back to this graph, with Private Packagist, it looks more like that, where even at the install step, you still go to the same place. But that's, yeah, in a nutshell what it does. I mean, we have a few more features, but about updating dependencies frequently, I think, yeah, just really having a routine of doing this is a really good thing, because otherwise you fall behind, and the more you fall behind, the more updating becomes a hurdle. So like, just keeping on top of this is really good. Having alerting as well for vulnerabilities that are published, that makes sense. That's something we do as well. There's a bunch of other vendors that do it too. And even better than just doing it yourself every other week, month, year, is to have it automated. So like in the past, I've used Dependabot, and I was, at least for PHP, really not happy with it, because it sometimes tells you, hey, I updated something, and then when you look at the changes it updated like completely unrelated stuff. And so we ended up writing our own version of that, which is called Conductor. And since using this the last almost year now, I've found like it's become super transparent to update. Like you just get pull requests where you get a pull request that says, okay, well, I've run this composer update command, and then you see the exact diff of the log file there, and you say, okay. Usually you get like, this is updating Symfony, which has lots of components, so that looks a bit more dramatic than it is, but most of the time you get a pull request doing like 1 or 2 packages at a time, small updates, and so you just stream them like that all the time. Almost daily you get these pull requests, and you're like, okay, well, CI passed, just merge it and deploy, and if something goes wrong, at least you know, okay, it must be in these 1 or 2 pull requests we merged, so it must be this version of this dependency that caused the problem. Like you narrow down the problem very quickly. While if you do this like massive update of everything once a year, you have no chance. Like if something goes down wrong, you don't know where to start. Yeah, I'll skip that because I'm running out of time. There's a few more features like security related stuff we added. So audit kind of runs through the dependencies and checks for vulnerabilities. And we also ensured that plugins cannot run unless they're like explicitly allowed, which actually came up recently on some Drupal project, I think. Like someone published some nasty package that had a plugin in it, and then like someone caught it because they were like, hey, why is this asking me to allow a plugin? Because I don't expect this to be a Composer plugin. And so that's why they went to look, and they actually found out it had some bad stuff in it. So yeah, I'm glad to see that these efforts are actually paying off. Then just a last quick note about open source funding. You might be familiar with this XKCD. So you also might remember Heartbleed, which was, I checked, I think in 2014 or something, it was released. So it's over 10 years ago now, Heartbleed. It was some SSL vulnerability. And back then, OpenSSL got these $2,000 of donations per year, even though it was really like this. Like it's just everything uses OpenSSL. Like anything doing SSL, TLS on a Linux stack is using this. And $2,000 per year is not a lot to go by. And so after Heartbleed happened, they were like, oh my God, everyone was freaking out. So in 3 days, he got $800, which is, it's a nice increase, but still like, not great. Since then, I'm happy to say like there have been a few bigger developments. We actually got funding from Alpha Omega and or this sovereign tech fund to do a Composer and Packagist audit last year. So they paid for the entire thing for like a security company to audit us, which was great. Like just whole penetration testing, etc. Like there was quite a bunch of money that. So things like that are happening, and it's good. But I think, yeah, it's also everyone's responsibility a little bit. So just keep in mind that it's your supply chain, and you should kind of make sure you're funding it as well. There are a few ways there. Like we have a Composer fund command, which lists all the dependencies you have and if they have information about funding. If you do PHP, which you kind of do if you're here, you can look at sponsoring the PHP Foundation, like we sponsor them as well. You can use Private Packagist if you want. If it brings value to you, then I'm glad you get something of value, and it also pays me to work on Composer, but that's just a side effect. And finally, take a look also at this open source pledge. I think this is pretty interesting, just really motivating companies to donate like at least $2,000 per year per full-time employee. That's also something we're doing. Like we're way above the $2,000, I think now. But yeah, we try to give back where we can to the main dependencies that we have, and I hope you can do too. Thank you.